What's up, purposeful pokers and self-discovery seekers? Poker with a Purpose back with you today with vlog number 4. It's been a little bit of time since we've been together. I've got a new video editor and a new format, and I'm really excited to share it with you, so let's see where it goes. What you can expect from today's vlog. Number 1, how to deal with various thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, and stories that come up during play. Ultimately, we're in charge of how we feel and how we play. And when we take full responsibility for whatever comes up, we realize that we're the creator, not things are happening to me. Number 2, standard equals safe. Notice throughout this, the times when I make the safe standard play instead of stepping through resistance and making the play which is maybe most uncomfortable in the moment. Reflect on your own play and notice where you make the safe, comfortable standard play and notice what that creates for you. Ultimately, by stepping through our resistance, we create results that are possibly unimaginable for us right now, but ultimately we create the results we dream of by stepping through our resistance. And number 3, our higher intention is our guide and connection is king. Notice throughout this the times when I play from a place that is not within alignment of our higher intention, which is to learn, to grow, to enjoy every experience, and to play the game of poker and fully enjoy it. When we're disconnected from our higher intention, we're disconnected from ourselves, from the game, and from the other players. When we align with our higher intention, we are fully connected in the moment, and connection is king because our opponents are always telling us exactly how they feel and what they want us to do. And by staying aligned with our higher intention and by being fully connected in the moment, we can make precise bullseye decisions from a place of our intuition rather than whatever thoughts or feelings are randomly telling us to do what's safest in the moment. So without further ado, hope you enjoy it and let's see what happens. Our first hand is pocket queens in the cutoff. We're going to open to 15 here and get one call from the big blind. The important thing for me about this hand is that I was not fully settled in to the game, to the flow of the game when I opened this hand. And this happens a lot, is that when we sit down, we get the cue based on the cards that says, this is a good hand, this is an openable hand, this is a playable hand, and I need to play it. And what I am really conscious of when I start my sessions is using the first 30 minutes to connect to myself, to connect to the other players, and to get in the flow of the game. And ultimately, I don't need good hands to play winning poker. Hands are just a bonus. So we're going to see how this comes to bite me later, that I never got fully settled in and I got triggered into playing hands before I was ready to play them. And by all accounts, opening queens and playing queens in your first orbit is standard across the board. Standard only gets us as good and maybe worse than the crowd. So I like to do things that are not standard, which sometimes means folding good hands when I'm not ready to play them. And as we see, I chose to play it this time, and we'll see how that factors in a few hands. Hand number 2, we get pocket jacks under the gun. We're going to open to 20. Everybody's going to fold, and we're going to end up getting called by the big blind, who's an older casual. We see a flop of ace, 9, 6, rainbow. And what I observed from him when the flop hit was that he connected to the board initially, but then he disconnected. He was somewhat excited, and he stayed pretty jittery. He connected somewhat, but it's not that exciting of a connection. So he has a piece, but he's not that happy about it. So we see bet 20 here, and we get called. On the turn, he checks, and I didn't fully stay with him. Although I saw his energy, excitement, and focus kind of went up a bit, I didn't stay with him to observe what he wanted me to do. So I end up taking the safe play and checking back. And then once he checks the river, now we know we have the best hand. So obviously I can bet safely here for value. and we end up getting called by a 6. But the note for this hand is I'm not fully settled in. I didn't stay fully connected with him throughout the hand, and I chose to take the safe play on the turn. And even though this looks like a pretty standard check back, if we have the opportunity and we know based on our connection that we have the best hand, we have to take that opportunity to be putting money in the pot. And that doesn't matter if it's a tenth of the pot or a quarter of the pot, whatever we can get called by worse hands, then that's what we do. Okay, hand 3. We straddle under the gun. We see the hijack, a casual, opens in the hijack, and then we get a regular who raises the button to $40. We get Jack 3 in the straddle, and now we're really going to see how not being fully settled into the game and not being present with our intentions, and how playing on impulse can come back to bite us. So we end up squeezing here to 120, because what I did was when I connected to this player initially, I saw that he was pretty jittery and unsettled, but because I didn't fully connect with him and I didn't stay connected with my own intention, I 3-bet on the impulse, and he ends up coming back and 4-betting to 300. Now, because I was operating from I need to play it safe, I end up folding here without being fully connected to him. His play on the button, this is the place where every player is most capable. This is the button. I look like an aggressive higher limit reg, and I'm squeezing from the straddle, and I could have anything. If he's going to be capable, it's in this spot. And because I wasn't fully connected with him, I don't know if his jitteriness is excitement or his jitteriness is unsettledness of I don't have a good hand and I'm uncomfortable. And so this is just, like I said, opening a hand like queens. Yes, it's standard, but if we don't take responsibility and accountability of what state we're in, later down the road, it comes back to bite us. And here we lose $120 because we weren't present with the purpose for this hand, and we weren't present with our opponent's purpose for the hand. Okay, next hand that we play, we get King 10 offsuit in the cutoff. We have 3 limps and we raise up to 40. And this hand, we're just about to go even more off the rails. We're right now in a state of part of us is playing it safe, and part of us is wanting to force the action and wanting to win. And when those two parts within are at odds with one another, it'll cause us to fight at times when we shouldn't be fighting, and cause us to play it safe at times when we shouldn't be playing safe. So what we're going to see here on a flop of 5-4 deuce rainbow, if you connect with the player to my right who called, what we see is that he's very connected, he's very settled, and I completely missed how excited he was. It's hard for you guys to see from this angle, but see if you can tell based on the way that he calls. Is he telling us to slow down, or is he saying, oh, I don't have anything, keep betting? So he calls the flop. On the turn, we bet 150 and continue because I was betting on the impulse and the thought is saying, he limped, he can't have anything, I'm the aggressor, I deserve this pot, I want this pot, I'm fighting for this pot, and it had me completely ignoring my connection to him. Now, after the turn, I kind of wake up and go, okay, if this guy's calling a $150 bet on the turn, what the hell am I doing here? So I correctly kind of come to on the river and end up checking back, and we see that he flopped a straight. Okay, first break. Good time to check in and ask what's not working. Number 1, no higher intention. Have you noticed so far that I'm not playing from the higher intention to learn, to grow, and to enjoy every experience and be curious about what's happening in the game? So far, I've been playing deeply from a place of need to fight, need to prove, need to win. And ultimately, when we're not fully connected to the higher intention, our monkey mind takes over, and the monkey mind will do whatever our bad habits were in the past, or it will do whatever is safest and easiest in the moment. Number 2, not stepping through resistance in the moment. That means in the Jack-Jack hand, stepping through resistance would have been betting the turn small. And in the King 10 hand, that would have been letting go of fighting for the pot and trusting my connection to see that this player has a really strong hand. So notice sometimes not stepping through resistance means making the safe play and checking back for pot control or for safety. And sometimes it means letting go of the hand altogether and moving on to the new one. Whatever the resistance is in the moment, stepping through it means making the most uncomfortable play. And that rewires us to be aligned with our higher intention rather than do whatever is safest, which ultimately builds us a mental prison. And that's how we get into a space of not enjoying the game, creating frustration for ourselves, and ultimately creating results that we're not proud of, because the higher intention guides us to our most expansive vision, and doing what's safe ultimately leads us to safe, standard, and not feeling very good about who we are because we're not playing free and we're not being who we are. And the third thing, if you noticed, I'm not fully settled into this game. I'm choosing to be not settled, as you saw from making the impulsive play with queen-queen previously. Playing queen-queen is fine, but choosing to do it on impulse rather than settling into our body, settling into the game, breathing deeply, and then coming to a place of connection and alignment before we make our decision. So you notice I never got to that place, and the hands that I've played so far have been out of alignment because I'm choosing to be jittery and disconnected and unsettled rather than calm, present, aligned, and patient. So let's see what happens next. In this hand, it's going to fold around to us in the small blind. There's a straddle, and we're going to wake up with 10-8 offsuit. The player to my left was pretty tight, and then the player to his left that's in the straddle right now is a regular from out of town, and he had like a bunch of chips. He'd been playing for like 10 or 15 or 20 hours or maybe 24 hours, something like that. So we open here, we get called by the big stack. The flop comes ace, 8-3, diamond, diamond. Pre-flop, he didn't even think about 3-betting me. And let's observe here when he calls, is his call, check in with yourself, telling us, hey, slow down, I have a big hand? Or is it telling us, I don't have anything, keep betting? So you bet 25 on the flop. He calls on the turn, another ace. We're very likely to have the best hand here with middle pair when the ace is paired and he doesn't 3-bet us. Again, on the turn, you can see that his call is telling us, hey, I'm comfortable, slow down. River is a 9. Could definitely make another argument for betting here. If he's going to call off 3 streets, this would be the one where he'd be bluff catching, blind versus blind, especially when I look aggressive and based on my image from the other hands I've played. So again, this was me playing it safe on the river, especially when he's telling us, hey, slow down. He could be calling us very light here. Okay, next hand, I didn't record the pre-flop action because I was taking notes, but basically seat 2 opened and I 3-bet him with ace 4 of clubs. We get a flop of queen 8 deuce with 2 clubs. Great flop for us. What I noticed from him here was that he was making pretty strong eye contact with me. The question I asked myself was, is he being confrontational or is he being appeasing? Eye contact can mean different things. Confrontational eye contact is, I'm ready to fight you. Appeasing eye contact is, please don't bet. So what I observed from him was he was giving me pretty appeasing eye contact. We obviously smashed this board anyway, and we continue and he folds. All right, so we are all refreshed right now. We just got back from a break, feeling good, settled in, ready to connect. We see C3 reg opens to 20, middle position calls 20, and we get random hand, queen 8 offsuit on the button. Now, what I observed from C3 when he opened was he went from, hey, I'm watching TV and I'm listening to music and I'm doing whatever, to, okay, I'm very serious and I'm ready to play this hand. And so I asked myself, is somebody that has a big hand going to tell me that he's very serious and ready to play hand? No. So he's trying to tell us that his hand is much stronger than it is. So we 3-bet here for dead money, $80 on the button, and the original opener calls. We get a flop of ace, queen, 3. What I observed was his energy stayed flat, he stayed unsettled, and he's telling me, slow down, I have something. So what does this mean? It means he doesn't have anything. Whatever he's projecting to us or whatever he's trying to portray or trying to tell us, it means that his actual hand value is the opposite. So we see bet 65 and he folds. The next hand we play, we get pocket queens again. There's a casual that opens, there's a call, and we 3-bet to 65 in the cutoff. And we're going to get called by 2 people. We get an amazing flop of ace, king, 6. Now, this is somewhere and something that I get to work on is when I get perceivably big hands, what I immediately do is disconnect from my process of connection, and I go to, oh my God, I have a big hand, and I let the excitement take over. So admittedly, I didn't connect throughout this hand. And the fact that this was a quote bad board for me gave me additional incentive to not pay attention to the connection. So I end up just doing vacuum, checking flop, checking turn, and then when they check the turn, I'm like, okay, well, I got to have the best hand here. So I just bet small and they fold. All right, here's a fun one. I believe it folded around to seat 5. I was the $10 straddle and seat 5 jammed in the small blind. He jammed like $40. And I told him, I asked him if he wanted action. He said yes. And I told him if I had a face card, I would give him action. First card I flipped over was an ace, so I called. I didn't even flip over my other card until after the hand. Ace high was good versus king queen, and I ended up having ace king suited. Okay, very next hand, we are in the big blind. The casual from earlier that flopped a straight on us, he limps. We make it 40 in the big, and he calls. So now that we've played with him a little bit, and after I've had my break and my reset, and I've had a full chance to connect with him, now I'm really tuned in to who he is, what he's about, and what he looks like when he's strong and weak. And this hand shows the difference between when we're just making random plays and we're not connected and when we are fully connected. So here we get an amazing flop, ace 10-7 with 3 clubs. We have ace jack with the jack of clubs. What I saw from him when the flop hit was he was jittery, completely disconnected from the board, and he was appeasing, telling us, please slow down. Versus the other hand, when he flopped a straight, he was connected, he was settled, and he was in what I like to call predator mode. This tells me that he connected very marginally, but I could see in the moment that he was still attached. So I'm just going to make it easy for him to do what he wants to do, which is be attached to the pot. And I bet 25 on the flop, 75 on the turn, and 125 on the river. And he looks us up with 10 deuce of diamonds, so just second pair. So we can see the difference between when we're fully connected with our opponent and his intention for the hand. We can make bullseye precise decisions and get max value versus when we're just making random vacuum plays based on the thought in our head and what we want to have happen and completely ignore what the opponent is clearly, obviously telling us. Our next time we play, we get pocket eights. There's a $15 open and we make it 50. In this game, especially when players are very likely to play face up and play straight ahead and play safe, I'm going to be taking the aggression lead more often than not. So at 10-20, this pocket ace might be a flat here because somebody behind might squeeze and I want them to squeeze. Here, this is going to be a 3-bet because I don't want players behind me calling to smash and then I have to play a pot versus 3 or 4 people. I want them to do what they want to do, which is play it safe. And I'm going to do that by forcing them to play it safe by putting money in the pot. So we 3-bet here, make it heads up. We get a great flop, 10-9-8, flop bottom set. We see that he is disconnected, jittery, and appeasing. He didn't connect that well. We see bet 75. He calls on the turn, 4 clubs. We bet, and he folds. All right, we're back from our second break. We're going to get a little crazy here. We're starting to feel the flow. We're getting into the game. We got a new player here that opens in C5, and I observe that he is just jittery. His energy's flat. He's not even fully present with what's happening here. So this to me is just he's going to have to smash the board in order to continue with the hand. So we're just going to take any 2 cards here on the button and 3-bet. Flop comes 9-6-5, 2 spades in the club. I see that he's jittery and he's disconnected from the board. No energy spike, no excitement. And the 6 here is going to be the best hand based on that connection. And we just pick up a free $35 here because he wasn't present. We were. And we took a risk with a non-hand and won the pot. All right, a few hands later, we get this same player, champion sweatshirt on the right, is going to open to 55 in middle-ish position. And we're just connected with him. He's just a player that for us was just easy to connect to. So what I observed in this hand was he was same thing, not present. He was flat. And In these lower limit games, players, they know how to open, and that's basically it. They don't know how to do anything other than open and call to smash. So when they open, and if they're not comfortable with the hand and they're just trying to see a cheap flop, then we can just take the opportunity with any 2 cards and make them play a bigger pot than they want to. And that's what we do here. Make it 150 with Jack Deuce off, and we get the fold. If you guys have watched my stuff, you know by now that poker is our mirror. And every once in a while, every session, every other session, whenever, we all get that hand that smacks us upside the head and gives us feedback about where we are, what state we're in, and what we're attached to. And this hand right here is that one for this session. I get a premium pocket aces. We get a bunch of pre-flop action. Under the gun made it 35. I make it 90. We get a casual that calls called to 90, and then the original opener calls. So we got a bloated pot. It's 3-way. The flop comes queen jack 3 with 2 diamonds. I am overloaded with excitement. The pot's big. I got pocket aces. Story in my head is that my results have not been that great lately, that aces have been getting cracked. Story. And this right now, my ego is so triggered by this hand that it's like I am so attached to winning this pot and to winning a big pot. As I described earlier, when I get excited and when I get a big hand, my habit in the past has been to completely disconnect from the process. And that's what happens here. My heart is pounding so loudly that I can't hear the thoughts in my head, and I can't connect to the player other than that I see that he's excited. He's relatively connected. I know I have the best hand on the flop and the turn. I know he didn't flop a set. So we bet the flop and the turn, and we get a bunch of money in. We got about 1,100 left on the river. And once the river comes a third diamond, we check. In a vacuum, this is a check here because the way this game is playing, nobody is calling big triples and nobody's putting any money in. You've seen the other hands that have played out. There's no money going in that's even over $200. So when we have a big hand here like aces, this is a place where players can make mistakes and being like, okay, I have a hand. I want to play a big pot and I want to get called by something worse. And in this game, these players are not calling us off with ace queen for $1,100 on the river. So we check here on the river and he's going to jam. And then just connecting to him, we see that he's just like, he doesn't have a care in the world. He's not trying to tell us to fold. He's just comfortably putting the money in. And as much as I hem and haw on the river here and pretend like I have a decision, it's really just my fuck. Like, I don't want to fold this hand. Like, I'm so upset that this hand didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. And I'm trying to find a reason to call. And underneath the surface, I'm just grumbling, miserable, pissed off, and disappointed and angry that the hand worked out the way that it did. And this is a hand that shows when we're making poker more than poker, when we have emotional attachment to the results of the game. And this hand is showing it. Okay, let's talk about this ace hand. I was super frustrated in the moment. I was not happy. Do I like getting aces cracked? No. Do I like losing pots? No. I was livid. I was so excited. Finally, I get a big hand. Finally, there's money going in the pot. This is my pot. I want this pot. And ultimately, when we get a result that is not what we want, that leads me, as you see, to frustration, disappointment, anger, rage. I had lots of stuff coming up after this hand. I let this player know that I didn't like what happened, and ultimately it has nothing to do with him. It's all my own stuff. So this is a good opportunity to look in the mirror. After this hand, I had to look in the mirror and ask myself, like, who is playing right now? Who is the one that is playing these hands? My higher self, the one who likes to learn, grow, who enjoys every experience, whether we win or lose, and ultimately who knows deep down that the way the hands play out are not a reflection of me as a person. That person was not playing. The person playing was the person who doesn't feel good about himself, the person who's scared, who needs results to validate who he is. By looking in the mirror, we notice who is playing, and the higher self is the alchemist. The higher self gets to choose how he responds and choose how he perceives every experience. We get to write whatever story that we want to, but first we get to notice whatever story is coming up, which in this moment for me was things aren't working out, my aces always get cracked, nothing works out for me, I'm better than this player, and look at him, how lucky he got, story, story, story. The key to being an alchemist is noticing when we're running a story from a place of scarcity, I'm not enough, I don't feel good about myself, I'm not safe, or whatever it may be, and just notice that it's a story. And then ask, like, what is this story telling me? And for me, it's like, well, I don't feel good about myself right now. I'm disconnected from my higher intention, and I wanted these results to make me happy. And then I get to, as the alchemist and as the creator, be like, no, I'm rejecting that story. And I get to choose that whatever happens at the table, I get to choose to be in enjoyment. I get to enjoy the experience. I get to learn from this experience. I get to grow from this experience. And ultimately, every experience is on my path of abundance and prosperity. Just because a hand is losing doesn't mean that things are going wrong unless we choose it to. And by aligning with things are going wrong, we create more things going wrong. So by choosing the new story of, no, this hand is exactly what's supposed to be happening, and I am fully on my path to abundance and prosperity, then we align with that path. And when we don't, we go the other direction. So notice when this stuff comes up for you, and see if you can notice the story, and see if you can look in the mirror when this stuff comes up, and then choose to write a new story, which is in alignment with your higher self.
Okay, next hand. I chose to not take a break after that pocket aces hand. My process and my higher intention tells me I got to take a break and I got to clear out the energy. I choose not to here because the state I was in was I'm vengeful, I'm spiteful, I'm mad, I'm upset, I'm hurt, and I don't want to get up. I want to win the money back and I want to feel better. So notice that I didn't get up here. That's something for me to notice, and notice when you're in that state and you don't want to get up and you just are there to feel better through poker. So that's what state I was in here. Same player from the aces hand opens to 25. A guy calls and we see that neither of them has anything. So we squeeze with any two cards and take down this pot without a contest. In this next hand, we get king, queen. There is an early raise to 25 from a new player in seat 1 that we haven't played with yet. But what we got to observe was in a previous hand, a couple hands ago, I got to see him open and show down pocket kings. So I got to clearly connect with his I have a monster and I love my hand energy pre-flop. This hand, he opened 25 and I saw that he was jittery, jumpy, and he was telling me with his eyes, please don't raise. So when they're telling that, I step through my own resistance and I raise. I make it 125. He calls. We get top pair, king, 8, deuce. We see that he is somewhat connected, but then he disconnects, is relatively flat, and he has capped excitement. So he could have connected to that. He could have had an underpair to the king, or he could just be floating. But I think with the float, we probably see a little more fight energy. So anyway, we bet 60 because he's not that excited. So we size down a little bit. He calls on the turn. It's another king. I sized up a little bit for value. I bet 150, but I was not connected to the drop of energy that he had on the turn, which would have told me I'm not continuing anymore with this hand. When we see that, we got to size it appropriately and make it something like 90 or under bet it like 50 from what we did on the flop. So we just got to trust our connection and what we see and not get too excited and bet on the excitement rather than the connection. Next hand, we get pocket sevens here in the hijack. Seat 4 limps under the gun for $10. We're going to bump it up to 50. This hand is another example of how precise we can be with our sizings when we allow the connection to dictate the sizings. He calls. We are going to a flop. The flop is 6-4 deuce. When he checks, ask yourself, what is he telling me? It looks like he's telling me, I connected. Be careful. We know that he wants to slow us down. And then who is he being? He was semi-connected, but then he disconnected and he never came back to the board. His energy and excitement was capped and he wasn't really fully present with the hand. So this is like, I want to see a turn card. I want to improve, but I'm not really happy with my hand right now. When the turn comes a king, this is where I get to like really tune in and see how he feels about his hand, because I let the excitement and the I need to protect my hand thought bet 200 for me on the turn, and this is just too big. What was I resisting? Betting something smaller and perhaps him playing back at me, or perhaps giving him a chance to hit his card. Whatever we're resisting is the play that gets to be made in the moment, because that's what our intuition is telling us to do. The resistance is telling us what the ego wants us to do or what the standard play wants us to do. So a lot of hands here that I'm playing where I'm getting a little too excited and I'm not staying present with the connection. As we can see, I'm missing out on value. Okay, I've got 2 more hands for you guys. I'm in the straddle. Under the gun opens for 25, our friend from the pocket aces hand. Under the gun 1, our friend that we observed with kings earlier and that we 3-bet and barreled. He 3-bets under the gun 1, and we see that he's jittery, he can't settle in, he's not fully present, and he has a lot of like bird-like behavior, which is like the opposite of predator mode. So I'm just going to take this spot. This is a great hand to 4-bet. We got blockers, we got suits, and we know that this guy is dead money guy. So he calls the 200. It comes queen, deuce, deuce, club, club. I bet 125 on the flop. I see that he is energized, but unhappy. He's disconnected from the board. And that call right there kind of said like, fuck you, I'm strong, slow down. So this tells me that he doesn't have a hand that can withstand pressure. If we have a value hand here, we could take a straight off and we could let him fire. Obviously, our hand has no showdown value, so we just got to keep the pressure on and keep telling the story that we have a monster. He wants us to slow down. We keep on the gas, 300 on the turn. He folds. If he did call the turn, this would be a triple. Like he just doesn't have a hand that can call off based on that behavior. Okay, this is the last hand of the evening. This is going to be the first ever Poker with a Purpose mystery hand. I'm going to give you guys all the information based on my connection and all the other relevant info for the hand. And I'm going to leave my whole cards a secret. And you guys are going to decide what the right play is. So the way the hand plays out to pre-flop is there's an open to 15. We 3-bet to 75. And our friend in seat 1 that we played a couple pots with, he makes it 200. Now, when he makes it 200, I saw that he wasn't fully excited. I saw that he did it very quickly. So he's not settled. He's not excited. And I didn't feel that he had like a really strong connection to his hand. So let's assume that we know that he doesn't have a strong hand pre-flop. Now, what else is going on with C1? C1, we've seen him fight for a few pots recently. So this is what it looks like from the outside when, as we discussed earlier, when there's that internal battle of part of us wants to fight and part of us wants to play it safe. We've seen him be involved in a few pots where he's done a lot of fighty things. He's 3-bet, he's floated, he's got to the turn. He's done things that look fighty and he's done things to try to win pots. But ultimately, we can observe that there's this other side of him that is saying, I desperately want to play it safe. Like I need to play it safe. I want to win and I want to fight, but I need to play it safe. And we know that because he's been involved in the biggest pots of the night so far, except for the aces hand. And he's folded the turns. He's put a bunch of dead money in and he hasn't risked a stack. So that tells me that this tug of war is going on. So based on our pre-flop connection, we see that he doesn't have that strong of a hand. And then we know that this tug of war is going on within him. So knowing that we are roughly 1,500 deep, what are you doing with what range of hands here? What are you doing pre-flop? What hands are you seeing the flop with? And then when the flop comes, I'm going to tell you in a second, how are you continuing with what type of hands on the flop? So I elect to flat here, and the flop comes Jack, 8, deuce, 2 hearts, and a spade. His behavior says, I'm disconnected. So he disconnected from the board and he brought his energy to me. He was unhappy. We can even see that his lips are kind of pouty and he's not fully enjoying the moment. He's not happy. He's telling us, I'm strong. I'm comfortable. I want you to believe that I'm strong, which is why he's bringing his energy to us. It's a form of peacocking. So he's saying that he's strong and comfortable, but he was unable to do anything playful, quirky, free, or enjoying the moment. So with that information, what do you do here? What hands do you do what with? And why do you do it that way? Remember, think outside of the box of the standard community accepted strategy, because again, standard strategy is only going to get you as good as the crowd and probably worse, because when you add the emotional component in, you're going to get worse than the average. So let's think outside the box and really test yourself. Trust the information that I've given to you, and I'm going to give you the results next week.
All right, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that vlog. I hope you learned a lot. As far as this one goes, I've done a lot of work off the tables, and this session was me really getting back into who I am and what my identity is and what my purpose is at the table and off the table. What I saw for me in this was a lot of internal struggle or internal rewiring of like noticing when the old bad habits are playing for me, the old identity, and notice how I can get into alignment with the new identity in the moment, quick as that. This one for me was really the process of reforming that new identity in alignment with the work I've been doing off the tables. I'm really looking forward to sharing the next vlog with you. We'll reveal the mystery hand and how that played out. The next vlog, we're going to be playing a little bit higher. We're going to be playing 10-20 with some more creative, more aggressive opponents. And I'm really looking forward to that. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.